1995. Nelson Sakaguchi, a banker of Japanese descent who had relocated to Brazil as a child, found himself embroiled in a financial tale that would take him on a roller coaster ride of intrigue, deception, and ultimately downfall. It all began with a seemingly innocuous fax.
Dear Mr. Nelson Sakaguchi, the fax read, "We hope you're well. Dr. Martins, a Nigerian customer of Banco Norost, your bank, has suggested that your bank might be interested in an investment prospect with the Ministry of Aviation and the central bank of our country." The message continued, explaining that the Nigerian government had moved the capital from Lagos to Abuja, and there was an urgent need for a new airport to serve the fast-growing city. We assure you the rate of returns would be very attractive. We hope it will represent a unique and very lucrative investment opportunity for your bank. Signed, Tafida Williams, the Director of Budget and Planning at the Nigerian Ministry of Aviation. Nelson had no prior business dealings in Africa, making the fax an unexpected and intriguing proposition. Dr. Martins, a bank customer, was the connection that prompted Sakaguchi to set up a meeting, marking the beginning of a remarkable journey. Nelson Sakaguchi was a plump man in his 40s, with short dark brown hair, a square-shaped face, and mesmerizing hazel eyes. He stood at 5 feet 4 inches and wore reading glasses. He was a sophisticated banker, with over 20 years of experience in the industry, and served as the Director of International Banking and head of the Cayman Island branch of Banco Norost for over a decade. The bank had expanded throughout Brazil, with around 100 branches operating by the 1980s. Their overseas branch in the Grand Cayman Islands was a virtual bank, existing electronically with its physical facilities located in Sao Paulo. It operated under the laws of the Cayman Islands and was not subject to the Central Bank of Brazil's regulations. Nelson Sakaguchi had full control over the management and internal procedures of the Cayman branch. He worked closely with 2 staff members, Otavio Apostolo Valero and Danilo Menente. Valero was responsible for accounting and administrative controls, while Menente served as the foreign exchange advisor. The unique setup was to ensure that only the international department employees and PwC auditors had access to the branch's operations. This level of secrecy was necessary due to the Cayman Islands' stringent banking laws. The Cochran and Simonson families, the bank's owners, were receiving biannual audit reports, but they remained unaware of the Cayman branch's real dealings. Sakaguchi responded to the Nigerian offer, expressing his interest in the project, intrigued by the potential for substantial returns. A meeting was set in London, where he would learn more about the venture, possibly one of the most lucrative deals of his career. Upon arriving at the agreed meeting location, Sakaguchi was joined by 4 individuals. One introduced himself as Paul Ogwuma, the Nigerian Central Bank Governor. The next was the Deputy Governor, and the other 2 are Alhaji Rifindi Rashid, the Aviation Minister, and his wife, Mrs. Rashid, who preferred to be called Rossi Ford. Over drinks, they presented a convincing case for their imaginary project. The plan was to build an airport urgently in Abuja, Nigeria, as the capital had recently moved there. This was to be a public-private partnership, and Sakaguchi was promised a substantial return on his investment. With just a $35 million investment, he could expect a profit of $39 million once the airport was completed in 2 years, a staggering 100.11% return. By the end of the meeting, Sakaguchi was convinced. In fact, he gave them $35,000 in cash. They would remit $39 million, they promised. Anyone who has ever been in a scam knows that this is the basic model, an attractive idea, playing on greed or altruism or both, which requires a small facilitation fee to access a larger amount. Some people realize they have been duped and count their losses, but Sakaguchi was not one of them. He returned to the bank's head office and began sending money for the project as agreed. He made significant transfers to various beneficiaries and institutions, both in Africa and abroad. It moved in 7 installments in 3 months between March and June 1995. Like a gambling addict already deep in the hole who refuses to quit, he continued sending money over the next 3 years. In the end, over $190 million left Norost for a non-existent project in Nigeria. This money was often in response to requests for licenses, facilitation fees, bribing money, and pretty much anything else the swindlers could think of. One wonders what was really going through Sakaguchi's mind all this time. His gullibility throughout this entire thing would astound investigators because it seemed too good to be true. Yet there was never proof he was in on it. However, as time passed, it became apparent that the project was facing unexpected delays, and they required more funds to complete it. Sakaguchi's investments grew substantially, as he believed that the more he invested, the more he would gain. His actions raised suspicions, but he clung to the hope that he would eventually recoup his investments and turn a profit. But it all came crashing down when Sakaguchi received a fax that revealed the true nature of the scam. The message stated that he needed to pay additional fluctuation charges to expedite the disbursement of his investment. He realized he had been duped when he saw that he had already sent $240 million for an airport project that didn't exist. With the weight of his actions and the impending crisis bearing down on him, Sakaguchi decided to go on vacation to clear his head. Little did he know that this would be the beginning of his downfall. The case unfolded as investigators began digging into the complex web of financial transactions and deceit. The bank auditors discovered the misappropriation of funds during negotiations to sell the bank to Banco Santander. The misappropriation was so significant that Banco Santander considered pulling out of the deal. However, the Cochran and Simonson families decided to bear the loss and proceed with the sale. At JFK International Airport in the United States, Sakaguchi was apprehended. Valero and Menente, who were involved in the bank's operations, were also arrested. The owners of Norost went ahead with the deal with Santander, but had to pay an equivalent amount of the stolen money from their sale value. Their after plan was simple. They would let the bank go and then go after whoever had robbed them. Ambitious as it was, it faced problems from the onset because of the multiple jurisdictions and information walls in tax havens. They hired the services of William Ritchie, a Miami lawyer, who began a global crusade to recover the money. By the end, his multinational team's efforts would trace $184 million. Since most of the money moved through tax havens and transparency rules were still nascent, investigators needed a lucky break to even identify the Nigerians. So they played the legal system in Switzerland. First, they filed a criminal complaint in Geneva to get an account that had received $5 million from Norost accounts frozen. The amount was too small a win. But the larger win was that once the court demanded the account records, they could see all the other accounts it had interacted with. The account belonged to Emmanuel Nwude, and from his transactions they identified his partners. Ritchie's plan was to file no cases in Nigeria. Instead, he would file them in multiple countries with stronger banking laws, and then force Nigerian banks to recover the money. The first disclosure orders came from London, and Nigerian banks, afraid their accounts and corresponding accounts in British banks would be closed, complied. On the other side of this entire windfall were the 3 Nigerian men and 1 woman in the London hotel in March 1995. The first was Emmanuel Nwude, the master planner, his partners, Nzeribo Koli, Christian Anajemba, and his wife, Amaka Anajemba. Of these, Emmanuel Nwude is perhaps the most interesting. He was a former director at Union Bank of Nigeria, although records show he was uneducated. He was a street-smart businessman. Christian was assassinated in 1998, most likely in relation to the scam, and it was Amaka who had to bear the brunt. Even on this side of the scam, greed seems to have taken over. A con artist is like a casino owner who knows when a gambler has spent too much, with Sakaguchi. It was as if the swindlers felt they had become invincible. They had a seemingly stupid source of unlimited money, and their lifestyles quickly changed to match. They bought expensive homes in Europe and the US, and started businesses in Nigeria. This made tracing how they spent the money easy for investigators. It would also make it, at least in Europe and the US, easy to recover the assets. On the 29th of May 1999, a new president, General Olusegun Obasanjo, assumed office in Nigeria. His government noticed the escalation of financial fraud cases, and he decided to form a body, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. This body was formed in the year 2003.
I, Olusegun Obasanjo,
do solemnly swear that I will
The newly formed commission started its own investigation into the scam. Nwude and the remaining partners immediately tried to bribe investigators, only for the attempt to be caught on audio and used to prosecute them for bribery. In total, they were charged with 86 counts of fraud and 15 counts of bribery. By this time, the figure stood at $242 million, $51 million of it in interest. As the cases dragged on, Amaka, now carrying the weight of both hers and her husband's parts, agreed to pay $48 million. She was jailed for 2.5 years. Nwude followed in November, offering to pay $120 million. He was jailed for 5 years. Although he would be quickly released in 2006, he also immediately went back to court to reclaim his seized assets, using the defense that he was already a rich man before the scam. And that, my friends, is the incredible story of the $242 million airport scam. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. I have tons more of entertaining videos on the way.